and the recording.
And Laura, do we have a quorum?
Looking now. We do.
All right, let's give it a minute. Joe, is this your first meeting on NVTA?
Yes, it is. Well,
Cool.
it is as a council member. Many meetings as a member of TAC.
It's going to take a while to get used to that title, Joe, but well earned and congratulations.
Thanks so much. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
I was going to be introducing him later, but I guess you've already taken care of that.
Well, Mayor Dunbar, I have to, you guys are very fortunate. Vice Chair Alessio is going to chair the majority of the meeting. I have to run to San Francisco for MTC. We have our departing CFO. We hired a new CFO. So I have to go to a reception down there. So I figured I would just squeeze that in. So thank you for the liberty. All right, Laura, I see it's 1 o'clock.
Alfredo, someone's got to do it.
All right, Laura, I think it's 1 o'clock. Do we have the affirmative to begin?
We do.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alfredo Pedroza, Chair of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. This is the TA meeting, along with our Vice Chair, Liz Alessio. We're going to call to order the meeting for Wednesday, March 16, 2022 at 1:01 a.m. If we can please play the preamble.
Yes, and I'll confirm that it is 1:01 p.m.
Oh, did I say 1 a.m.?
You did.
It's what happens when you have young kids at home. You don't distinguish between 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. if you're waking up early. So thank you for the clarification. Go ahead, Laura.
All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Due to Governor Newsom's state of emergency declaration regarding COVID-19 and in accordance with AB 361 allowing remote meetings, this meeting will be accessible via teleconference and Zoom to all participants. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the NVTA website at a later time. The chair will call upon board members and all speakers by name, ask that they speak clearly and state their names before giving comments or remarks. The chair will call upon board members and all speakers by name, ask that they speak clearly and state their names before giving comments or remarks. Board members and members of the public participating by Zoom who wish to speak use the raise hand feature or *9 on their phone. Phone participants will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number and must unmute themselves by pressing *6. It is requested that public speakers state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received at info@nvta.ca.gov after 10 a.m. today will be entered into the record but not read out loud. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they are free to do so and should raise their hand. The chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers and may be part of the Zoom recording.
Thank you, Laura. I believe that concludes that. Thank you for reading the preamble. All right, at this point, I'm going to call on Councilmember Kraus to lead us in the pledge, if he may.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, council member. Let's move on with roll call.
Leon Garcia,
Here.
Mark Joseph,
Here.
Chris Canning,
Here.
Gary Kraus,
Here.
Liz Alessio,
Here.
Scott Sedgley,
Here.
Alfredo Pedroza.
Here.
Belia Ramos,
Here.
Paul Doring,
Here.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Here.
Joe Tagliabachi,
Here.
John Dunbar,
Here.
and Doug Weir.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Mayor Dunbar, would you like to introduce our newest member of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair. I just want to recognize Joe Tagliabachi, who has joined the Yountville Town Council. Will be serving out the remainder of a term of all of this year. And Joe has been very active with the Technical Advisory Committee and many things transportation, not only for Yountville, but countywide. So it's a great pleasure to have Joe joining us as a board member.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Chair Pedroza. I appreciate being on this board and look forward to working with you all and all the stuff that we have coming to us and getting it done. So thanks to all for your support, and look forward to meeting you all in person sometime soon.
Welcome aboard, Director, and we look forward with your experience in being able to contribute day one. So congratulations on the appointment, and thank you for stepping up to serve on a regional body as well. All right, let's proceed with the adoption of the agenda. Directors, any changes to the agenda as presented for the tax agency? I don't see any hands from any directors. Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on the adoption of the agenda?
We do not.
All right, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So move, Garcia.
We have first by Garcia,
Second, Kraus.
second by Kraus. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth, Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabachi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Laura. Let's move on to item 5, public comment. This is the time when anyone can address the tax agency on anything that's not on today's agenda. Laura, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
All right, thank you, public, for tuning in. We're going to proceed with our consent agenda items. We have a few items on consent, 3 to be exact. Directors, any questions, comments on our consent calendar for the tax agency? I don't see any hands raised. Laura, do we have any public comment on our consent agenda items?
We do not.
All right, directors, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Canning.
We have first by Canning,
Joseph, second.
second by Joseph. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos.
Yeah.
Jeff Ellsworth.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I'm not hearing the sound coming through my computer, but I'm listening on the phone. So I'm muting now.
We're
Thank
getting
you.
a bit of an echo. We're getting a bit of an echo from you, Director.
Okay, I've gone ahead and muted you, Director Ellsworth, to prevent the echo. Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabachi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes, and may I also note the exceptional pronunciation of Tagliabachi. I'm very impressed.
Thank you very much. Motion passes.
Thank you, Laura. Let's move on to our regular agenda items. We're going to start with 7.1. This is Measure T Master Agreement update. Victoria Ortiz is going to present this. Directors, this is found on page 19 to 52 of your agenda packet. Victoria, take it away.
There we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Victoria Ortiz, and I will be presenting item 7.1, updates to the Measure T Master Agreement. This is an action item. Staff is proposing updates to the Master Agreement, including Exhibit C and adding a new Exhibit G to the Master Agreement. These amendments are for both administrative updates, so just updating language so that properly reflects the processes that NVTA is already implementing, and to clean up language from when this was first drafted. It is also to add in some key changes that we think will better help with reporting for Measure T. So to go into a bit more detail, the updates that we are proposing are in the Master Agreement, Section 4 for the maintenance of effort. This would move the maintenance of effort certification deadline to January 31st of the following fiscal year instead of January 1st, as it currently stands. This proposed change is to provide jurisdictions with more time to close their general ledgers for certifying their maintenance of effort, and also to alleviate any burden caused by administrative closures or holiday closures throughout December. The next section that we are proposing changes is in the 6.67% Measure T equivalent fund expenditures. Currently, a process does not exist for formally certifying 6.67% equivalent funds. And currently, jurisdictions just collectively commit the 6.67% equivalent fund for Class 1 bicycle and pedestrian facilities. NVTA staff is proposing to add a self-certification process for equivalent fund expenditures to help track these expenditures. The master agreement only lists that funds are supposed to be provided, or fund spending is provided in semi-annual reports, and then commitments are provided during the biennial 5-year plan update. So this self-certification process would occur annually, much like the maintenance of effort, and would be due on January 31st as well. The proposed language is found in Section 3 of the amended master agreement. A sample of the proposed resolution that jurisdictions can use if this is passed can be found as Exhibit G to this staff report. NVTA would also be preparing a self-certification if this is passed, as many of the projects funded to meet this requirement are projects that NVTA oversees, and this can be seen in attachment 2. Moving on to the next document that we are proposing updates, Exhibit C, Accounting, Reporting, and Auditing Guidelines. The changes proposed to this exhibit are mostly cleaning up language to take out references to a contract between the Napa County Auditor Controller and NVTA. This is just to portray a more accurate language for what NVTA is already implementing. And since it's not relevant to how we are implementing reporting, we feel that it should be removed from the master agreement attachments. The other changes that we are proposing are to update financial reporting requirements. Currently, the annual California financial report is required, and the state controller's street report are required to be submitted to NVTA by January 1st each year. The changes that we are proposing are to change the annual California financial report due date from January 1st to January 31st to match the due dates of the maintenance of effort and the proposed 6.67% equivalent fund self-certification, and to remove the requirement for the state controller street report. We are proposing removing the requirement for the state controller, the street State Controller's Street Report as it does not provide consistent information relevant for Measure T auditing. Lastly, we want to propose changing the due date to January 31st for the annual California financial report to allow jurisdictions more time to close their general ledger and complete their comprehensive audit instead of it being delayed by any chance from January 1st. The attachments include redlined versions of the master agreement and a clean version of the master agreement, redlined versions of Exhibit C, which is a new proposed equivalent fund expenses resolution, and then redline versions of Exhibit C, accounting, reporting, and auditing guidelines, and a clean Exhibit C of the accounting, reporting, and auditing guidelines. And with that, I am open for any questions.
Thank you, Victoria, for that presentation. Directors, any initial questions at this time? Director Joseph.
Just kind of a procedural one. Did we review this with the Oversight Committee, and do they have any issues?
Yes, on March 2nd, this was reviewed by the Independent Tax Oversight Committee, and they made a recommendation that the NVTA board should approve the proposed changes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Joseph. Victoria, I don't see any other comments from directors at this point, so let me turn to public comment. Laura, do we have any member of the public that wishes to make a comment on 7.1?
We do not.
All right, directors, I'll bring it back. This is an action item. If there are, I'm getting an echo from someone, so thank you for that, Laura. So directors, see no further questions. This is an action item. I'll entertain a motion.
Also move to approve the recommended action by staff and thank them for their good work.
All right, we have first by Vice Chair Alessio,
Dunbar, second.
second by Director Dunbar. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Petroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes, and the 323 number showing there is my phone. I'm still having some audio trouble, but yes on this vote, please.
thank you. Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, directors. I'll introduce the next item and then I will be departing and Vice Chair Alessio will be taken off. Again, I apologize for that. A little bit out of order, but at our Napa Valley Transportation Authority meeting, we will be not having closed session today. That will be continued to next month. So just a little bit of a disclosure. But again, let me introduce 7.2. This is Measure T Policy and Procedure Update. Victoria Ortiz will cover that. That's found on page 53 to 73. Take it away, Victoria, and then Vice Chair Alessio will step into the chair role. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair Pedrosa. Once again, this is Victoria Ortiz presenting item 7.2, Measure T Policies and Procedures Update. So to go along with the proposed updates for the master agreement, we are proposing updates to the policies and procedures to better reflect the changes of the master agreements that were just approved. These changes include the adding language for the Class 1 bike facility self-certification for the 6.67% equivalent fund. This certification would be due to NVTA staff by January 31st of each year. And it also adds language that NVTA staff will also prepare a self-certification document for the NVTA board approval because NVTA oversees so many projects for that are applicable for that fund. The process would help us improve tracking and reporting for the 6.6 Measure T equivalent fund requirement. And then the other updates that we're proposing include revising the project closeout process for Measure T funded projects. This would create a submission schedule that coincides with the semi-annual progress reports. Currently, closeout procedure does not provide, or our closeout procedure does not provide a time frame for which jurisdictions must report project completion. If revised, the updated procedure would require projects to be closed out, projects that are closed out to be submitted with the semi-annual progress reports that are within 6 months of closure. So this would be submitted during March and September. This is to alleviate administrative burden for both the jurisdictions and NVTA staff, as it provides a clear method of organizing those notices of completion and other project closeout memos. The other proposed change is actually updating language to make the policies and procedures due dates for semi-annual progress reports consistent with the existing due dates in the master agreement. The due dates that are currently listed in the master agreement are March 1st and September 1st, respectively. And we are updating or proposing updates to the semi-annual progress report due dates from the policies and procedures, which currently list the due dates as March 31st and September 30th. So this would be moving the due dates to the beginning of the month instead of the end of the month. The attachments include the red line version of the proposed changes and a clean version of the proposed changes. And this was reviewed on March 2nd at the Independent Tax Oversight Committee. And they made a recommendation that the NVTA board should approve the proposed changes. Please let me know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Do we have any public comment or questions on this item?
It appears we have a raised hand from Director Tagliabashi.
Okay. Do we have anybody from the public that has a question?
We do not.
All right, very good. Director Tagliabashi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just one question. Did this come before TAC as well? I didn't hear that in the report, and I'm wondering if they had any comments. Thank you very much for your answer and your work.
Thank you. Yes, it did come before TAC twice. Once before it had gone to ITALK just to introduce the idea. And then again at the beginning of this month during the TAC meeting. For them, it was just an information only item, but they did have a chance to review and provide any comments if applicable. There weren't any outstanding comments for or against the proposed changes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Any other questions among our directors? No questions? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the recommendation?
So moved, Ellsworth.
Okay, and a second by Kraus. Okay, Laura, please move forward with roll call.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph, Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth, I saw you move and say yes, but I'll note that down here. I know no one else could hear you. Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. Can you return us to the agenda, please? Thank you. So we're at 7.2 on the agenda. Is that correct, Laura?
We just finished 7.2. We are now on 7.3.
Perfect. 7.3, maintenance of effort, MOE certification. Victoria, you are on again. This is page 74 to 121.
Hello, this is Victoria Ortiz presenting item 7.4, maintenance of effort certification. So annually, jurisdictions are subject to a maintenance of effort provision as a part of the Measure T ordinance. This provision establishes a minimum general fund expenditure threshold equal to the average of a jurisdiction's expended fiscal years of 2007, 2008, 2008, 2009, and 2009, 2010 on local streets and road maintenance. All agencies submitted their maintenance of effort amount and supporting documentation that establishes the MOE amounts for those 3 fiscal years before receiving Measure T revenues. To verify that jurisdictions meet this maintenance of effort requirement, each jurisdiction must certify annually to NVTA-TA that it met its MOE expenditures the previous fiscal year by submitting it to NVTA staff with an electronic resolution approved by the jurisdiction's governing bodies stating that the jurisdictions met the established MOE. In situations where a jurisdiction does not meet its annual local maintenance of effort requirement, the following applies. Any agency that does not meet its local maintenance of effort requirement for a 3-year period shall have its funding under Section 3 the following year reduced by the amount the agency did not meet its required average maintenance of effort for the 3 years prior. In the case that a jurisdiction did not meet the maintenance of effort for FY 2021, the maintenance of effort amount for FY 2020 or FY 2018, 2019, 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021 were averaged. If the average was equal to or exceeded the minimum maintenance of effort amount, the jurisdiction was deemed compliant with the maintenance of effort requirement. The jurisdiction's maintenance of effort resolutions are provided as attachments to this report and include the financial documentation supporting the maintenance of effort. Key things to note this year is that the cover sheets provided for each jurisdiction show the amount certified for FY 2018 through 2021, as well as the 3-year average. This was shown because there were jurisdictions that did not meet the minimum maintenance of effort for the fiscal year. So the 3-year average was taken to see if they met it for the 3-year average period, as stated with the in the ordinance. The jurisdictions that did not meet the maintenance of effort included, give me 1 second. I want to make sure that I state the correct jurisdictions. The 2 jurisdictions that fell short during 2021 were the city of St. Helena and the town of Yountville. They did meet the 3-year average period minimum, but for fiscal year 2021, they did fall short, as can be seen on their cover sheet for each respective jurisdiction. These maintenance of efforts were reviewed by the Independent Tax Oversight Committee as information only items. So no recommendations were made.
Okay, is that your complete report?
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
that is the complete report. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I see we have a hand raised by Mayor Dunbar, Director Dunbar.
Yeah, question about what qualifies for the additional maintenance of effort funding. Would federal infrastructure funding that is being made available qualify as an outside funding source, or does it need to come from the jurisdiction's direct budget?
From my understanding, the maintenance of effort is meant to be general funds. So it needs to be local funds from each jurisdiction.
So if federal dollars are put into a general, the general fund, but with specific infrastructure or transportation related designation, you're saying that would not qualify, that it needs to be from a different source? And if so,
Director Dunbar, the language specifically calls out general funds. And general funds are those funds that are not linked to outside funding for federal, state, or any funding that would be transportation related. It has to be general funds. The purpose was, right, to not supplant the funds that jurisdictions were already funding their local streets and roads. Like this was not to Measure T was not intended to replace those funds.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Dunbar. Any other questions from our directors? We're going to take another look on this next page. I don't see any. Do we have any public comments or questions?
We do not.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved, Kraus.
Okay, so Mr. Kraus made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second Garcia.
And Director Garcia has second. Laura, would you please go through roll call?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph. Mark Joseph,
Yes.
thank you. Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth. Jeff, I'll unmute you. Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now on to item 7.4, the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 5-year project list. And Victoria, you're going to deserve a break after this. You're on again.
Hello, this is Victoria Ortiz presenting item 7.4 fiscal year 2022 through 2027 5-year project list. So every 2 years, the jurisdictions update their proposed 5-year lists as part of qualifying for Measure T funds. These projects are presented in front of the Independent Tax Oversight Committee for review and recommendation to the NVTA board, and the NVTA-TA board, my apologies, then approves the 5-year project list for each of the jurisdictions. These projects must meet the requirements for local streets and roads programs as previously approved we have a list of projects that are example expenditures that are approved for Measure T spending. For the Measure T expenditures for 2022 through 2027, a table was created to show the projected revenues for each of the jurisdictions, the total proposed Measure T project cost for these jurisdictions, and then the total project costs for all the projects on the list, including any sort of outside fund that may be used to supplement the Measure T projects. This can be found on page 4 of the staff report. So as can be seen, the proposed Measure T revenues for the city of American Canyon for the 5-year period coming up is expected to be about a little under 8.5 million. And they have programmed and proposed projects accordingly. For the city of Calistoga, it is the projected revenue will be about 2,976,336, and they have proposed $3,686,000 worth of Measure T proposed projects. The city of Napa is projected to receive about $40,479,693 and then they have programmed about 44,350,000 Measure T proposed costs. The county of Napa has proposed $43,708,050 or is projected to receive that much for Measure T revenue, and has submitted about 66,043,423 Measure T proposed cost projects. The city of St. Helena has a projected revenue of $6,503,846 coming in for the 5-year period, and has submitted $4,074,630 worth of Measure T proposed cost. And lastly, the town of Yountville has a projected revenue of $2,976,336 and has a projected spending for Measure T of $1,932,000. Please let me know if you have any questions about any of the proposed projects. This was brought to the Independent Tax Oversight Committee to review the project list to make sure that the projects were consistent with the intent of the measure. And it was recommended that the NVTA-TA board approve the 5-year project lists for each of the jurisdictions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do we have any directors with any questions? Not seeing any hands raised. Laura, anybody on public comment for this?
We do not.
Okay, so we can entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
So moved, Canning.
Okay, and first by Canning and second by
Garcia.
Second by Garcia. Laura, please move forward with roll call.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yeah.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Okay, we're on to number 8, future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items that we want to suggest? Not seeing any. We'll move forward to number 9, and that is the adjournment. Approval of our next regular meeting date of April 20. Let's go ahead and adjourn and move on to our next NVTA itinerary. Okay, so calling this meeting to order on this March 16th at 1:36 p.m. We've already done roll call, so I believe, Laura, we don't need to repeat that. And we already presented the preamble, so we don't have to repeat that, correct?
That is correct. And I can confirm that at the preceding NVTA-TA meeting, we called roll with no absences.
Excellent. And Director Dunbar, did I miss a step?
No, but I just wanted to recognize our newest representative from the town of Yountville in our official NVTA board meeting. Joe Tagliabashi joins us as our newest council member. He has extensive experience with our TAC and other transportation projects as our recently retired public works director. But I just wanted to formally introduce him in this setting.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And we're very, very grateful that we have Director Tagliabachi, if I'm saying that correctly. I like to call him Joe, easier, to this board. So thank you, Joe. We're thrilled.
Thanks so much. Me too.
Welcome.
Moving on to the adoption of the agenda. As Director Pedrosa had mentioned in the NVTA-TA meeting, we are going to remove closed session for this meeting. We'll move it to the next board meeting. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Not seeing any. Laura or Kate? Then we can go ahead and have an adoption of the move forward with the agenda at this point.
So moved, Kraus.
Thank you. And a second?
Second, as amended.
Thank you. And Laura, if you'd like to roll call?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 4 is public comment. Do we have any general public comment?
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much. On to number 5, chairpersons, board members, MTC, and Association of Bay Area Government updates. Do we have any director updates?
Director Alicio,
Yes.
when other members of the board have spoken, I'm happy to do the commission report for Chair Pedrosa.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is there anything from, Executive Director Kate Miller will do the MTC update. Do we have an ABAG update? Yes, Director Garcia?
Yes, we're meeting on the 17th tomorrow.
Okay.
It was just dealing with continuing of the remote meeting requirement.
Okay.
That was earlier.
Sounds pretty straightforward. If there's nothing else, then if Director Miller would like to give us an MTC update, we welcome that.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. At the February 23rd Bay Area Infrastructure Financing Authority, the committee did approve the revisions to the BAFA structure. This will allow BAFA to serve as the tolling agency for State Route 37, subject to legislative authorization to charge tolls on the corridor. Later on in the agenda, on our legislative agenda, you will be requested to act on the legislation that Senator Dodd has introduced, SB 1050, that would allow us to toll in the corridor. Our Chair Pedrosa mentioned to you that MTC's longtime Chief Financial Officer, Brian Mayhew, has retired. The new CFO is Derek Hansel. He was formerly of the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, Caltrain, and San Mateo County Express Lanes Joint Powers Authority. So he's got some great experience to bring to MTC to replace Brian. Kate Hartley has been hired as the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority Section Director. She has previously served as the Chief Lending and Investment Officer for the San Francisco-based Housing Accelerator Fund, overseeing $284 million in financing and construction models. This, I think, is in preparation for MTC's interest to move forward with a regional measure to help address the housing crisis. The Bay Area secured over $650 million in state funding for 1,372 affordable homes. In February, the governor's office announced the first round of awards for the California Housing Accelerator. It's a $1.75 billion one-time investment to provide bridge funds to shovel-ready affordable housing projects. The program is derived from funds from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. The first round of awards totaled $923 million statewide, with projects within the Bay Area securing over $650 million that will lead to the production, as I mentioned, of new affordable homes. The Housing Accelerator prioritizes projects for public experience homelessness and for those below 30% of the area median income. Nearly all projects are expected to break ground this summer. The express lanes and 101 in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties began tolling on February 11th. Commissioner Abe Goga participated in the ribbon cutting event and VTA bus yard on for the VTA bus yard in Mountain View. And MTC is operating express lanes in San Mateo and as on behalf of the San Mateo County Express Lanes Joint Powers Authority. There's a youth academy. Typically, MTC has a summer intern program. Because of COVID, they are having the Bay Area Summer Academy. There is a address to apply on MTC's website. It's for youth that are 16 years old or older. We'll put these kids through an academy to teach them all about transportation and housing issues in the Bay Area. The address to apply is mtc.1/Bay Area Summer Academy. At the March 9th Program Allocation Committee, the committee endorsed revisions to the One Bay Area Grant Program, or OBAG 3, to adopt guidelines for the county and local program call for projects. MTC recommended adoption of the county and local program guidelines for the region-wide competitive call for projects administered and selected by MTC. The balance of the funds gets distributed to the counties. Staff is working with your staff on the next programming cycle. Let's see. Transit Capital Priorities is a program that oversees the Federal Transit Administration funds that MTC has. It's a lot of money. It's about $1.4 billion. And we are, Divine Transit is anticipated to get about $7.5 million over a 3-year period. And we will be using those funds for operating funds as well as bus replacements and ADA operating assistance. The fiscal year 2022 Cap and Trade Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, LC-TOP. The Program Allocations Committee approved the referral of this to the Commission, and MTC or NVTA will receive about $362,000 for zero emission buses. And then March 7th, Network Management Business Case Advisory Group met and made progress on its strategy to identify a network management approach to oversee the region's 27 transit operators. As part of this effort, the group is evaluating models of governance around the region. The timeline to publish its findings is this June, with the adoption by the Commission in July 2022. And that concludes the Commission report.
Thank you for all of that, Director. Any questions? Seeing none at this time, I believe we can go on to the next item, and that is the Director's update. Kate, would you like to provide that for us?
Thank you. Okay, the big news is that a couple days ago, we were awarded $8.5 million in Federal Transit Administration bus and bus facility grant funds for 8 electric buses and charging stations. The grant application was prepared by Tony Onorato and Roxana Marati. The award was the 3rd largest in the state, which is really a significant achievement given how small our system is. And it will significantly help us replace our diesel and gas powered vehicles in advance of our 2030 goal. So well done, team. Thank you, Tony and Roxana. We have a number of open committee member positions. You might remember that we have 5 committees in addition to obviously our boards. And the openings include 2 members of the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, one that would be a member at large, and the other one that would fill the certified public accountant position. That committee advises the board on Measure T, the half-cent sales tax for transportation improvements. We also have 6 openings on our Citizen Advisory Committee, including members representing the cities of Calistoga and St. Helena, Agriculture, Active Transportation, Environmental Interests, and Vintners. That committee advises the board on all things bike and ped. Oh, sorry, that's the Active Transportation Committee. But let's see, where was I? Oh, the Citizen Advisory Committee actually advises the board on all things that NVTA does. There are 2 members open on the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and then there are 2 members open on the Paratransit Coordinating Council Committee. That committee advises the board on elderly and disabled issues. So we invite members of the public to go to our website and check out the committee openings, and also if board members could disseminate it to people they think might be interested in serving on our committees, we'd very much appreciate it. On February 18th, we held the Vine Maintenance groundbreaking event. The event was well attended. Congressman Thompson spoke, as did the FTA Region 9 Administrator Ray Tellis, the Executive Director of the California Transportation Commission, Mitch Weiss, Deputy Executive Director of Policy for MTC, Alex Bockelman, as well as our very own board chair, Alfredo Pedroza. And it was really a great event. Today, I'd just like to acknowledge a staff member who is relatively new to NVTA, and her name is Victoria Ortiz, and you met her today. She was hired to oversee Measure T, which was probably made pretty obvious to all of you while she was presenting every item on the TA agenda. But she has stepped up to oversee the public information and outreach area before we hired Valerie Walston. And without being asked, Victoria volunteered to update the website, oversee improvements to the website, maintain our social media sites, and prepare outreach materials in both English and Spanish. Victoria's skills set is immense. Her focus is keen. Her demeanor is kind and patient. Victoria just passed her 6-month probation period with flying colors, and she's been a great addition to the NVTA team. Thank you, Victoria, for all you do to make the agency successful. And that concludes my report.
Thank you much, Director Miller. And thank you, Victoria. It's clear we're very, very fortunate to have you. Director Dunbar.
Kate, last meeting, we received a very helpful update on the Imola corridor construction project. Is there any update on that? In particular, I was concerned about the bike and pedestrian through way that was temporarily kind of blocked because of construction, but there was a lot of work going on. Is there an update?
Yeah, so we recently the contractor recently poured the sidewalk right there, which is great news. But staff has observed the auto operations around there, and we are very concerned about worker safety as that work continues, even though the sidewalk's there. And so even the project's ahead of schedule, we're hoping to, finish up this summer, and we should be able to remove it pretty soon. And I realize that it does create a hindrance for bikes, but we have signage out. We're hoping people will be careful in that area, and we'll continue to monitor it.
Yeah, it's a significant improvement in that whole area. So I appreciate that it's ahead of schedule. Thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question, Director Dunbar. Do we have any other questions from the board here? I don't see any hands raised as I'm scrolling through. So very, very good. Okay. So next item on the agenda here is our consent agenda. Does any board member wish to pull an item from the consent agenda? And I don't see any. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
Sedgley moved, then Kellner.
Thank you.
Joseph.
Excellent. Thank you. Sedgley has made the motion. Joseph second, and roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph, Chris Kinney,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. So now we're on to the regular agenda items, 9.1. Resolution number 17-06, revised amending the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 2, OBAG 2, program to address the Calistoga to St. Helena Vine Trail funding shortfall. And Danielle, you get the pleasure of presenting this.
Yes. Good afternoon. Danielle Schmitz here to present item 9.1, approval of revising resolution number 1706 for the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 2 program to address the Calistoga to St. Helena Vine Trail funding shortfall. The action before the board today is two-part. It's to amend the OBAG 2 program to move the $2.2 million in surface transportation funds currently programmed to two projects. one in American Canyon, the Green Island Road Class 1 for $1 million, and the other in the city of St. Helena, the Main Street pedestrian improvements for $1.2 million. It's actually a little bit over. There's a remainder, about $6,000. And move that funding to the Vine Trail, Calistoga to St. Helena in the OBAG 2 cycle. And the second action would be to commit future OBAG 3 funding in the amount of $2.2 million to those two projects, to the Green Island Road Class 1 project and the St. Helena Main Street pedestrian improvements project. The funding secured to date for the Vine Trail, Calistoga to St. Helena is a mix of federal, state, and local funds. It includes a $6.1 million grant from the Active Transportation Program, which is a discretionary grant under SB 1. The project is currently facing a funding shortfall of approximately $4.2 million. This is due to bids coming in higher for the construction phase than anticipated under the engineer's estimate, as well as additional construction support costs that were not factored into the estimate either. NVTA staff is proposing to partially backfill the shortfall by swapping out OBAG 2 funds from the two projects mentioned before and program those funds to the Vine Trail project currently. NVTA has met with staff from American Canyon and St. Helena, and they are supportive of the swap, especially provided that the OBAG 3 funding can be used in the same fiscal year that their projects are programmed in. And with the addition that the OBAG 3 funds allow them for greater flexibility should they need to move their project out to a further fiscal year. NVTA staff has also verified this approach with MTC staff, and it should be noted with the $2.2 million commitment in OBAG 3 with this board action that our total commitment under OBAG 3 is going to be $4.2 million. This is because of an earlier funding swap that we did in 2020 to backfill the Vine Trail shortfall with an additional $2 million from the city of Napa's 5-way project. So this leaves very little new capacity under OBAG 3, and so the board should be aware of that. We do plan on doing an OBAG 3 call for projects. We will be bringing that back to the board in spring in a couple months, I would say either in April or May for that action. NVTA has also been working with our funding agency partners as well as the local jurisdictions to find a solution to gap the other $2 million needed for the $4 million. And we believe we have found a solution because we have such a great STIP savings on, which is the State Transportation Improvement Program funds on our Sosco Junction project. So we will be bringing a funding swap with the County of Napa back to this board in April, and the County Board of Supervisors will also be taking an action in April to gap the other $2 million. But the action before the board today is to amend the resolution 1706 for the 2.2 and then to commit future OBAG 3 funds to American Canyon's Green Island Road and the city of St. Helena's Main Street pedestrian improvements. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you for the report, Danielle. Do we have any questions from the board here? And Director Ellsworth.
Thank you. I've had some technical difficulties today. I apologize if for some reason I drop out. Perhaps Director Doring can finish up with any perspective from St. Helena. But we want to be team players on this. Certainly, it's a challenging issue for us because we have really safety issues regarding our downtown sidewalk issues. So as supportive as we want to be and in this effort, we also hope that as this comes back to the third cycle, that there will be support to move forward in St. Helena. And if any opportunities come up before that as well, that we keep an eye on that. As we said, it's a safety issue in downtown St. Helena with the sidewalks. So we do want that project to move forward, but we want to be good team players on this Vine Trail project that we also believe is very important. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Ellsworth. Director Canning.
Yes. Well, I was going to thank, first of all, staff and also our colleagues down in American Canyon
for everyone's flexibility and trying to make all this work. So first, thank you all to that. And I know, Danielle, you've been working on this quite a bit to make this project come to fruition. A long time in coming, and a big surprise. I shouldn't say surprise after 2 years of COVID pricing, but a big surprise in the gap. And then, as my colleague who just spoke before me, Director Ellsworth, you raised some concern to me, because does that mean that the Vine Trail path of travel has still not been approved through the city of St. Helena? And back to Danielle, what does that mean for this project moving forward? Because I believe construction has to begin by a date certain time. So if I can get some clarification on that.
The path of travel for this project, the term limits is from Pratt Avenue in St. Helena to Calistoga, and that is all settled. I believe that Director Ellsworth is talking about the segment between St. Helena to Yountville, and that the path through St. Helena has not been determined yet. I think that they will having some sort of council action on it soon.
Okay, so I'm happy to hear that that is no longer a St. Helena to Calistoga problem. It's a St. Helena to Yountville problem. So I'll leave it to Mayor Dunbar. Thank you all very much for your work on this.
Thank you, Director Canning. Director Ellsworth, did you want to comment on Director Canning's question?
Yes, thank you. And this coming Tuesday, the Vine Trail issue will be coming to council, so we should be having some clarification on the route through St. Helena at that point. So just some clarity there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Director Garcia.
Thank you. Appreciate the ability for us to be flexible on this. And so, of course, help our neighbors in the area as well. I think the Reline Road's a large project, planning still underway, and it sounds like the option, the financing option works out with American Can for more flexibility. And at that time gives some opportunity for and to meet time deadlines in projects in St. Helena. So I think that's been beneficial. I appreciate the work on everybody.
Thank you, Director Garcia. Director Joseph?
Yes, and I like, well, number one, I've been a big fan of the Vine Trail project for years, and so I'm glad to see it move forward. And I'm a little frustrated that we can be helpful in the sense that the Green Island Road project is several years behind schedule, and it would have been nice if we could have apologized and said we used our OBAG money last year and we don't have it. But be that as it may, I'm glad to be flexible, especially if OBAG 3 is going to make us whole in the next year or two. The other point, though, is even the STIP money that's freed up because we were lucky on the Sosco Junction bid, if we recall, we also used several years of STIP funding to make that happen too. So I'm getting a little worried that we're beginning to spend a whole lot of tomorrow's money on projects today. And somewhere along the line, I guess I'd like a little discussion about, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Are we getting ourselves into a situation where in order to get things today, we're basically mortgaging 5 or 10 years worth of opportunities? And how do we address that? I know there's been discussion about changes to Measure T. So maybe somewhere soon we need a kind of a strategic discussion about how do we make some things happen when everything keeps getting more and more expensive. But again, I'm supportive of doing this because I'd like to see the Vine Trail move forward as long as, you know, American Canyon doesn't necessarily suffer other than in the short run. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Points well taken. I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions from the board? And seeing none here, let's go ahead. And are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment? Or Laura, did NVTA receive any written public comment on this item?
We did not.
Okay. And so is there a motion and a second to approve?
Move to approve, Garcia.
Okay, Director Garcia made the motion to approve. Do we
Well,
have
I've raised my hand a couple of times. I just
Oh,
want to be recognized.
Thank
Paul
you.
Doring. Sorry.
Thank you, Director Doring. I apologize. I'm
Oh,
flipping
that's
back
okay.
to
The hand went up
pages.
and went down a couple of times. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
Director Doring, you were using the hand clapping sign, just so you, so I
I'm
thought you were
sorry
just
about
supporting
that.
everyone's
It's very
comments. I
small on my screen.
apologize.
I apologize. Thank you, Chair. I would feel more comfortable, and I ask the indulgence of the board, if we could add the second part of the recommendation into the resolution itself. That language, I don't see it in the resolution, and I don't know if that's problematic with respect to the use of that resolution later in seeking OBAG funds, but the commitment itself to use OBAG 3 funds for these two projects. I would like to have that language in the resolution if the boards would indulge on that.
So the resolution is specific to the One Bay Area Grant 2 program cycle that we have to submit to MTC for the specific OBAG 2 grant. And then I think that if the board could make, and we could have, it would be an action item of the board in the minutes, that the second part of this, which is committing future OBAG 3 funding to those two projects, I think that should be able to suffice as a board action.
Yeah,
that's what we did with the city. That's what we did with the city of Napa when we took $2 million from the city of Napa's Silverado 5-way project and we moved it to the Vine Trail. Well, we actually moved it to the maintenance facility to free up funding to move to the Vine Trail. But
and I appreciate that. That's acceptable to me. I would just, for the board's background knowledge, this downtown sidewalk project for the city of St. Helena is particularly important to us. When you're in a small city like ours of 6,000 people, and Mayor Canning and Mayor Dunbar know this, your downtown is extremely important. It's the zeitgeist of your community. It's extremely important. And unfortunately, we have a buckling situation with pavers. Someone thought it was a bright idea to put pavers down years ago, and that competes with a tree. So it's a huge public safety issue. Of this $1.2 million, that's just a very small part of an overall almost $6 million project. It's a psychological issue, it's an emotional issue, it's an environmental issue, and it's mostly a public safety issue. So any help that we can get later on that project, in particular OBAG 3, would be great. And like the city of American Canyon, I wish that the city of St. Helena had used the money earlier, but for various reasons, we delayed our project. And so I do very much appreciate the board's recognition of that and willingness to fund us later. So thank you for that very much.
Thank you, Director Doring. I appreciate your comments. And did you second that motion? Or are you leaving that to somebody else?
I will second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And so if I remember correctly, was it Director Garcia that made the motion initially?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, very good. Laura, would you proceed with roll call?
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph. Mark Joseph?
Yes. I
Thank
think my mute doesn't quite unmute as well or something.
Chris
But yes.
Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes, and I'm applauding myself.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent.
Then I would like to make a motion that we commit the 2.206 million in funding to commit it to the OBAG 3 process for those two projects, or words to that effect. If I'm making sense.
Does Director Kate Miller, do you have any response to that, or are there any questions?
I had to leave in the middle of your discussion, so I probably need a little bit of backstory to respond to that.
The idea is simply to kind of memorialize the second part of the board actions. There is the resolution that formally transfers the projects in OBAG 2. What Director Doring brought up, and I think is a good idea, is by board action to just confirm that we really do want to program the two programs from American Canyon and St. Helena into the OBAG 3 cycle.
Yeah, I think what we can do is we can, the board can approve prioritizing those projects, but remember the final action to program is MTC's purview. So we could do that. I think, it's certainly the intent to make sure that these projects are prioritized in OBAG 3. But yeah, I think we can certainly use this action as a way to memorialize the board's prioritization.
Yes, on the staff recommendation or the action, the board approval, the second item is to commit the 2.2 million to the two projects under OBAG 3.
The idea of our intent is to prioritize them, because if I read between Director Miller's comments, there's a public hearing process and so forth. So all we can really do is show our intent to, or the board is trying to prioritize these two projects in the OBAG 3 cycle.
Director Counting, did you have a question?
I lowered my hand. It got answered there, but I was just going to say, I don't think we could commit to that. I mean, we can make the preference, but not the commitment as a non-agendized specific item.
Right. I think that's where I'm headed now.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I hear you and agree. And Director Dunbar?
Mayor Canning basically covered it, but I would say that at the very minimum, I would want to hear legal counsel to know if we could even address this, because it feels like it's outside the agenda item. And I think that it's the intent of the board is already represented in the language that we just voted on.
Yeah, yes, I have those same red flags myself.
Yeah, this is Deanne Gillick, General Counsel. I think as Danielle Schmidt indicated, the agenda item and the staff report had two recommendations. One was the resolution and the reprogramming of the OBAG 2. In addition, number 2 in your staff report is the prioritization for OBAG 3. So it is something that is properly before you. So it's the commission's desire. I think, the staff's recommendation was approve the resolution, and which did the OBAG 2 prior request. In addition, item number 2 is the prioritization and the commitment for OBAG 3 for these two projects. So,
right, so there's a commitment, but we can't take action on actually programming it until the program goes to the board
until it comes back.
later this fall.
Yeah.
Right. So is that distinction clear to everybody now, or?
Yes. So my motion would be that it's the board's intent to prioritize the two projects, the American Canyon Green Island Road and the St. Helena Main Street pedestrian improvements, as part of the OBAG 3 process.
Second.
So the language that we have in there now says that the NVTA board approved committing $2.206 million in funding from the One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3 to Green Island Road and to St. Helena Main Street. So that's the action. And I don't know if we could get to anything that's more defined than that, given that the board is not acting on the program.
Yeah, it's not pre-agendized, but I do think it's in the language that
it's in the language that we're committing the money in OBAG 3 to these two projects.
Yeah. Director Dunbar?
Well, I just want to reiterate, it seems redundant and unnecessary to vote again on the same thing that we just voted on, that is pledging to the level we can do the funding for OBAG 3 as well. So I don't see the need to do it. We've already made that commitment as a board as far as we can, as our executive director pointed out. That project action is going to be at a later date.
Well, then, just for my clarification, the motion we've already just passed approved the resolution and the commitment?
That is correct. It's
correct.
one vote for both parts of this item.
Then I'll withdraw my resolution, because it's already covered. I just thought we had approved the resolution only, so it's my misunderstanding.
Are we all clear and comfortable with moving forward? I think we are. Okay, very good. Thank you for the discussion and everybody's feedback. Going on to agenda item. Oh, we need to do roll call. I don't think we did. Losing track here. We did not do roll call. We had a first and a second. No, we did do roll call. And then you brought up another potential motion. Okay. Going back to 9.2. That's our next agenda item. And that's the award of construction contract for Napa Valley Vine Trail, St. Helena to Calistoga project. Rebecca is going to be reporting on this. This is pages 45 to 146. Rebecca.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the board. My name is Rebecca Schenk. I'm the Program Manager for Public Transit here at the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, and will be presenting on item 9.2. Okay, so today there are 3 items that, we will be presenting. This is the second of 3 items as it relates to the Vine Trail. And there'll be 3 items, I guess, or 3 subsections associated with item 9.2. So today we're asking that the board approve Resolution 22-11, awarding a contract to Gelati Construction, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $12,585,896.20. We're also authorizing the executive director to enter into and make minor modifications to construction agreement number 22-11 with Gelati Construction Company, Inc. for the construction phase of the St. Helena to Calistoga Vine Trail project. And then finally, we're approving a not to exceed contingency amount of $616,708.91 to issue change orders. The alternative today, besides the staff recommendation, would be that the board could decide not to award the construction to Gelati Construction, Inc., reject all bids, and rebid the project. The goals that are met by this action before you today, and you've seen the Vine Trail previously, so I think you're pretty familiar with the fact that it's a Class 1 facility along the highway, which would greatly improve safety by reducing collisions, and the facility would be open to all bicyclists and pedestrians, many of whom cannot or choose not to drive. So it would both improve the safety in order to support all modes and users, as outlined in Goal 2 for NVTA, as well as Goal 1, which is to serve the transportation needs of the entire community, regardless of age, income, or ability. And so our process, how did we get here? So first, we issued an invitation for bid after we had completed the final design and gotten a right-of-way certification for Caltrans. And that invitation for bid was released on December 23rd of 2021. Bids were then due on February 2nd of 2022, and NVTA received 7 bids. At that time, the apparent low bidder was Gelati Construction at the dollar value that was presented in the board item. And so I'm going to give you just a little bit more detail on that timeline, and hopefully this will help me to do that. And so let me make sure that I'm sharing the right thing here. One moment.
Rebecca's toggling between her role as moving the agenda around for you and doing this presentation. So be a little patient and a little tolerant. Thank you, Rebecca, for doing that.
Thank you, Rebecca.
And so the actions here are this. So we received the 7 bids, as I mentioned. And then what happened on 2/11 was that we verified the bid results and posted them. And the bid results that were posted at that time were a change from what we had seen on 2/2. So as you'll see in the board item, we originally had Gelati Construction, as I had mentioned, as the apparent low bidder at the $12 million. And then second, we had other Mercer Fraser. However, there was particular language in the bid item that said as follows, that we basically would lead with the fact that the individual bid items would trump the total result. And so whenever we did the addition on the Mercer Fraser bid, it came in significantly lower at $11.8 million. And so that is what we had posted at the verified bid results on 2/11. And so because of that change between the apparent low bidder and the verified low bidder, NVTA opened a bid protest period for 5 additional business days. And that was to conclude on February the 18th. So what happened then here was Gelati Construction Company submitted a bid protest on the 18th, on that 5th business day. And so what they were protesting was the Mercer Fraser bid and the completeness of that bid. So NVTA reviewed their protest letter, and we also at that time, in that intervening period, received a bid protest in a response to the Gelati bid protest, so to speak, from Mercer Fraser. And so NVTA took those collectively, and then on the 28th, we did 3 things. So we responded to Gelati Construction, granting them their bid protest, because we discovered that Mercer Fraser had indeed not provided one document and not provided documentation as it related to a second document. And we also issued a notice of intent to award to Gelati Construction to all 7 bidders. So that was our action then on 2/28. So then 5 business days later, you notice a pattern here, Mercer Fraser submitted a protest of the award of the contract to Gelati Construction Company. And then promptly on the next day, NVTA responded to the letter to the Mercer Fraser, concluding that Mercer Fraser's bid, once again, as we had mentioned on 2/28, was non-responsive, and confirming our intent to award to Gelati Construction. And so that brings us to where we are today. And so the action basically before you today is as follows. And just to kind of rehash where we are. So we want you to take the action on item 9.2 to award the construction contract for the Vine Trail, St. Helena to Calistoga to Gelati Construction, and then make authorization for the executive director to enter into the agreement to make modifications, and finally to approve a contingency amount. In terms of the time frame and maybe like the next steps as it relates to this, so one of the steps, I guess, was already taken today in item 9.1, which was for the NVTA staff and the board of directors to approve moving the OBAG funding. The next step would be on April the 5th, when the board of supervisors for the county will be taking action to do a swap in order for there to be STIP funding moved to Napa County in exchange for $2 million placed on the Vine Trail project. Then after that action, assuming it passes on the 5th of April, NVTA, with the authorization received today, would move forward executing the contract with the Gelati Construction Company, and then would proceed to start construction on this project in the late May, June timeframe. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Just to be clear, I just wanted to emphasize what Rebecca is sharing with you is that we would not award until we had all of the funding in place. And I want to make that very clear, and that your action today is contingent on that happening. Otherwise, we would not be able to award the contract.
Thank you. And I see Director Canning's hand is up.
Yes, Rebecca, thank you for the report. Just one question. How do I protest the protest of the protest of the protest? Just so I can drag this out a little longer.
I believe that your 5 business days from the protest to the protest to the protest has now passed.
Okay.
And therefore you don't have the opportunity at this point. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for your patience. Yeah, thank you for your patience working through this and bringing this to us.
Thank you, Dr. Canning. And Director Joseph?
Yes, so I guess I'd like to look at the alternatives a little bit.
Sure.
Let's take maybe the worst one first, rebidding. I think rebidding is usually a bad thing because everybody's had a chance to see your cost estimates, and so you don't get a very good number. But in terms of the project itself, I know this project has been pushing deadlines all along. So how disaster or how difficult or challenging would it be if we did decide to rebid because of all the confusion of protests and protests? So that's
Sure.
the first question.
Okay. Yeah, and I almost think of that one as two-part. So we did receive, for what it's worth, 7 bids, and these were the initial amounts, right, in table 1 that you're seeing, and then this was the verified bid amount. So we do at least have the 4, say, verified low bidders in the kind of high 11 to low $13 million range. So almost like, $1.2 million away from one another, in that this is kind of how they saw the project, and this is, to agree how they competitively bid on it. So I'm not sure if we rebid the same project, right, that we would get any significant savings at this point. So that's one. Then 2, related to the timing, I guess what that would look like is if we would rebid it. So as of right now, due to the allocation of the CTC funding of $6.1 million, we would have to move on this item and award the contract no later than May 31st of 2022, as it currently stands with CTC. So if we were to rebid it, I fear that we would miss that deadline of the May 31st award of the contract. And so what we could do is we would move now to ask CTC to allow us to extend that period for the award of the contract, and then hope that they would grant us that at the same time that we were rebidding the project, is I guess how that would work out.
Basically, rebidding would just be it would be difficult at best.
It would be difficult. We would have to get action from the CTC in order to extend our deadline, because I don't think if I put out the rebid today, I could be ready to take action. For example, if April board meeting, hence we'd hit May, and that May meeting, right, is usually the 2nd or 3rd week, and then we just have the 2 weeks to award the contract. And there's always some back and forth, right, and some, language discussions that happen legally between the low bidder and NVTA. So I wouldn't feel very good about that time frame.
And the next option would be to award it to someone other than Gelati.
Correct.
And that gets into the whole protest of a protest. Yeah.
Correct. And that, right, we could potentially award it to Mercer Fraser. We did find, however, that they did not submit the 2 items, which was the questionnaire and financial assurances statement, nor did they submit the verifiable backup documentation for the bidder for qualifications form. So I guess we would take action to dismiss those as basically non-substantive, and then we could award it to Mercer Fraser if then the board would decide to make those non-substantive. So I guess that is potentially another option.
Yeah, and that's where it gets interesting, is because Mercer Fraser claims they did submit it. And initially, when we recalculated and said Mercer's actually the lowest bid after all, it seemed like that verification process should have exposed the fact that, hey, these 2 forms are missing. So that, I guess what bothers me, normally things are a little more cut and dry. There's always something, but here it's like, how can you prove that something wasn't there all along or something like that? That's where I scratch my head and get perplexed. So staff could clarify it for me.
Yeah, I mean, that I think in terms of how it would have played out, or maybe, yes, could have played out a little bit differently. We had NVTA staff, I guess, identified that they had not submitted the questionnaire and quality assurances statement. But I guess at this point, we were just saying what the math was indicating in terms of maybe the verified bid amounts. And then Gelati did bring it to our attention about the bidder qualifications form. And we do have Hanson Bridget, who is our legal counsel that's been advising us specifically on this topic. If Dave would like to chime in at all on.
And Rebecca, if I
Joseph's
may,
point.
I just also want to share that we also knew that there was some missing information in the bid. The Gelati protest had a number of things in it that we rejected, but we did verify and confirm that we were aware of at least 2 of the items that they had put in their letter. So just so you know that there was never a question in our, we had just not gone through the process to verify that the bid was responsive at that point. But we did acknowledge that there was some missing documentation in the Mercer Fraser bid.
And I'd be happy to chime in. Thank you for including me in the board meeting. My name is Dave Gehrig. I'm a partner at Hanson Bridget. And, I specialize in public works construction and government contracts, and have been working with Rebecca and the team on this contract award over the last several weeks. So maybe the first point to raise here in response to Director Joseph is I think there would be a legal difficulty for NVTA to award to Mercer Fraser now that it is clear that those 2 documents were not included with Mercer Fraser's initial bid submission. And the reason for that is it's sometimes possible for an agency to waive an irregularity in a bid that's submitted if that irregularity is minor. However, here, I don't think the irregularity was minor because both in the bidder qualification section and in the other document, which was the
questionnaire and financial assurance statement.
That's right, the questionnaire and the financial assurance. Both of those documents raised questions about whether the bidder had successfully completed at least one project of similar size and complexity in the last 5 years. And that requirement was effectively treated as a minimum experience requirement. And so by failing to submit those 2 forms, both the bidder's qualification form and the questionnaire, there was no way for NVTA to know whether those minimum experience requirements have been satisfied within the 4 corners of the bid that were submitted by Mercer Fraser. So I think there's a real question as to whether legally NVTA could waive that irregularity and go forward with an award to Mercer Fraser. In fact, I would advise that that's not an option legally that I would recommend is available to NVTA.
Thank you, David. Thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
Director Joseph, are you good? Can we move on to the next question? Are you have anything else?
Gotten a good answer. Thank you.
Great. Director Sedgley.
Thank you. First of all, I support, awarding this contract to Gelati at this time. As Mr. Gehrig pointed out, the Mercer Fraser is a bit unknown. They're all the way up in Eureka. We don't know their performance record. We do know Gelati. It's not only local hire. I know they're not headquartered here in Napa County, but a lot of their people live in Napa County and work for Gelati, and they deliver projects. We've all seen projects they deliver. Boy, the cost is phenomenal. That's about $2 million a mile. I think I'm in the wrong business. If I could build bike trails for $2 million a mile, I think I'd be doing pretty well. But I guess it is what it is. And delaying this any further will only increase the cost, is what we've seen. So probably should, pull the string and get moving on this. And do we have estimates for the St. Helena South to Yountville? Do we have any engineers' estimates yet on about those costs? Because that's going to be the real challenge, how we've had to move money around to fill the gap for this section. And I'm 100% in support of the trail. It's just a little worrisome about the next phase, the big phase, and then of course the Green Island phase and down below. So
the future trail segments are largely in the county, and I believe the county will be taking the lead on those. And the segment between Yountville and St. Helena is very in its preliminary pre-construction stages, so no estimate is available yet. But I think, you know, what we've been doing is looking at whatever project that we're delivering at the time, escalating that cost and multiplying it by the number of miles. I do think the segment between Yountville and St. Helena, with the exception of maybe the portion that goes through St. Helena, it might be an easier project to deliver than some of the other projects we've done to date.
Thank you. Dr. Sedgley, anything else?
No, thanks for that. It's just interesting read. The number 2, Mercer Fraser, and number 3, McCullough, they're both from the Eureka area. McCullough's from Arcata, and it was interesting that they came in so close together. But anyway, thanks, and I do support the Gelati, awarding the contract to Gelati. And I tried to raise my clap hand for Mayor Canning, but I came up raising my hand instead.
Thank you, Dr. Sedgley. Director Dunbar.
Yeah, following up on what Mr. Gehrig offered, am I mistaken, or is it as simple as Mercer Fraser did not give a responsive bid and therefore should have been disqualified regardless of their bid amount? Is that accurate or not?
That's accurate.
That is accurate, yes.
So all the protests really are not important to that point, that they would be disqualified, and it would then go to the next lowest bid that's qualified, which would be Gelati Construction, correct?
Correct.
Okay, sure seems simple to me.
That's getting straight to the point, Director Dunbar. Thank you. And I don't see any other director questions. Do we have any public comment on this item?
I do have one. One moment while I unmute our public. Oh, he's unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. It's Chuck McMinn with the Vine Trail Coalition, and it's as complicated as it is. This is a fantastic day, and I want to thank you all for being great partners. I want to thank NVTA staff for all the hard work in getting us to the point where we can build another 9 miles of the Vine Trail and get another 500,000 uses a year in support of getting out of your car and enjoying Napa Valley. And you know, I commiserate with everybody that the price seems to be going up every time we talk about this. And I'll just point out that the Vine Trail is right there with you guys. And we've put in $4.5 million as part of this project. And, you know, we've committed to 25%, and we're at 25% of all the money raised, counting all of the grants and everything else. So we should take, you know, a step back and congratulate ourselves for actually being able to get to the point where we can build and deliver a great amenity to our citizens that we're not going to have to do this every year. This is going to be around for 100 years. And so we ought to just enjoy the fact that we've been able to get it.
Thank you very much, Chuck. Appreciate your comments on that. Laura, are there any other comments or written comments submitted?
There are not.
Okay, then with that being completed, is there a motion and a second to approve? And please,
move.
And that is moved by Director Krause. Do we have a second?
Dunbar.
Correct.
Second by Dunbar. Very good. Laura, roll call, please.
Leon Garcia.
Just for clarification, are we talking about adopting the recommendation when you say
Oh,
approve?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, this was a motion and a second for all 3 items in the agenda of 9.2.
Thank you.
Okay, Leon Garcia.
Yes.
Mark Joseph.
Yes.
Chris Canning.
Yes.
Gary Krause.
Yes.
Liz Alessio.
Yes.
Scott Sedgley.
Yes.
Belia Ramos.
Yes.
Paul Doring.
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth.
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi.
Yes.
And John Dunbar.
Yes, but I'd like to ask a clarifying question. I'm still going to vote yes, but item 2, do we know, is there a threshold for minor modifications that we're authorizing?
There is, not in terms of dollar amount, but in terms of you're authorizing me to enter into these agreements and make minor modifications too, yes.
No, I understand that. Is there a threshold for what minor modifications are? Is there a dollar amount not to
There's
exceed?
no dollar amount. I'm not going to be changing the dollar amount. I'll only be changing minor terms and conditions if we have to.
Okay, I still say yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Okay, we're on to 9.3. And keeping with the trend of the Napa Valley of the Vine Trail here, we've got construction management, biologists and archaeologists services during construction and cultural resources monitoring and treatment agreement for the St. Helena to Calistoga Napa Valley Vine Trail project. Rebecca, you get to bring this forward to us.
Perfect. So thank you. And once again, I'm Rebecca Schenk with the Napa Valley with the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. And I'm presenting on item 9.3 today. And there are a few recommendations associated with that. There are 4 indeed. So we're on to authorize project work order number 21-22 CM2 with Sequoia Attachment 1 for biological monitoring and archaeological services in an amount not to exceed $97,280. Second, project work order number 21-21 CM02 with Park Engineering, which is attachment 2 for construction management services in an amount not to exceed $769,200. Item 3, amendment number 5 to work order number E-13 to NVTA agreement number 18-23 with RSA Plus Inc. for services during construction, which is attachment 3 for engineering services in an amount not to exceed $396,900. And agreement item number 4, agreement number 22-C10 with Middletown Rancheria, which is attachment 4 for cultural resources monitoring and treatment services in an amount not to exceed $60,000. In just a moment, I'm gonna switch over. And so what I want to talk about today, and let me resume my share, is this. So we have awarded item 9.2 so far, which was related specifically to construction. And we were advised by legal counsel to take a second item to deal with kind of what we're calling these construction support services. And so under here, what we'll be authorizing today is really to offer all of the construction inspection, materials inspection, biological monitoring, and archaeological services for the project. And so all of the support that we would need. So the alternative besides awarding item 9.3 today would be to defer those items until a later date and risk not having sufficient project management expertise to manage the construction. And this would result in risking non-compliance with the permit requirements for the Napa Valley Vine Trail St. Helena to Calistoga segment, which would result in significant fines or could result in significant fines to the agency and substandard construction outcomes. So what we're trying to do here is really deliver the best project possible. And it also really gets to the fact on some level as to why this project is so expensive, because it is a lot more sometimes than just putting, say, down the 10-foot of asphalt and the 2-foot shoulder on either side. We're dealing with permits from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, from the Army Corps of Engineers, from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Water Board. Just for some perspective on a project like the maintenance facility, for example, we have no permits from any of those agencies, even though the overall project cost is significantly higher. And so NVTA goals that are met by this project as we've already talked about on the previous item, really related to the Vine Trail. But I think this also enables us to use taxpayer dollars efficiently, because hiring consultants for short term with expertise in kind of a variety of fields is more economically viable than hiring full-time employees with the qualifications needed to manage the construction of the 3 capital projects that we have going on at this time. So if you remember Sequoia, who we're using for the ecological and archaeological things as part of the Vine Trail, we are also using them for the maintenance facility, and then park engineering, for example, which we'd be using on the Vine Trail for construction management, is also our construction manager on the Ambola Park and Ride. So we're trying to make the best, or do the best we can with the different consultants we have available. So the process to date in getting to all 4 of these contracts is outlined in the board item. The process for 3 out of the 4 really involved RFPs and kind of a traditional process, and each of those has been brought to you, the board, prior. Kind of the one exception here being Middletown Rancheria. So how I had originally envisioned this project is a Middletown Rancheria, the Native American tribe, would have probably been in a different scenario, a sub to Sequoia, who's doing the archaeological work. However, in our Army Corps of Engineers permit for this project, it's specifically called out that NVTA has to directly contract with Middletown Rancheria and not use them as a subcontractor. So that was kind of part of Middletown's Rancheria's set of requirements, and that the Army Corps of Engineers thought it was important to have a direct contract and put that as part of our permit. And so that's why there's not maybe a traditional RFP process associated with Middletown Rancheria. So to recap, the actions that we're asking you to take today are all related to construction support services for the Vine Trail, specifically construction management, biology and archaeological services, and services during construction for engineering work, and finally cultural resources monitoring and treatment agreement with the Native American firm. And so the next steps, very similar to what we had seen with the prior item, would be to enter into contract with these firms, again, after April 5th and the Board of Supervisors action related to the funding of the project, because if we don't have a construction project, right, we don't need construction support. And after that point, then we entered into contract, we would begin our mitigation and monitoring work per our CEQA document and have that in place so that Gelati construction could move forward. We would also be working with Park Engineering to get them up to speed on this project as the construction manager, and also look at potentially any deductive change orders that we might be able to do on the Gelati construction side, just to keep our overall project costs low and try to increase our contingency. We've already had some discussions with Park and RSA specifically about some items that we might no longer need in the project, and keep our project costs minimal. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And do we have any questions among our board members? I'm scrolling and looking and seeing if there's any hands. If I don't see you, please, there we go. Director Ellsworth.
Thank you. I'm certainly in support of this. I'd offer the motion, but I do want to make the comment that this may be a really excellent opportunity for us as an overall community to recognize the indigenous peoples of the area, sort of the sort of true history of what occurred here. And as this project moves forward with the cultural monitoring, perhaps we as a board can help figure out how to highlight some of those historical realities. I know the governor a few years ago offered an apology to the indigenous people of California regarding, the historical treatment. Maybe this is an opportunity within this for us to find some way to help rectify that as well. So I'd offer the motion. I just want to make those comments as well.
Thank you, Director Ellsworth. Director Dunbar.
I just wanted to show appreciation for our staff, recognizing this is really specialized work and outside the scope of NVTA's, I think basic skill set, kind of fundamental skill set. And I think if we had tried to force this upon our internal existing staff, not only would they probably all quit, but I think that we would jeopardize the budget and the timeline of this based on not knowing what we don't know until we're in the middle of it. And so I think it's very wise that we're looking at temporary support to make sure that all of these significant projects go as smoothly as possible, and more importantly, within budget and our timeline.
Thank you, Director Dunbar. Great comments also. And I don't believe I see any other questions or comments from the board. So let's move to the public. Are there any public comments or written comments? I see a hand up by Chuck again.
So I just want a quick comment to a great point that Mayor Ellsworth raised about recognition of the Wapo Indians that are native to this area. Included in the project in the construction bid is an educational sign that we place on the trail that talks about the first natives of Napa Valley, and includes a link to more information that will be available through the Vine Trail.
Very good, including the Southern Patwins and the Miwoks that were here additionally. So
yes, as well, yes.
Yes. Any other comments or written comments, Laura? I see that we have a Director Joseph, your hand is up.
Actually, it was a happy hand. I was going to mention what Chuck was saying is that years ago, we had talked about a series of panels, and I'm glad that he brought it up. So we are kind of recognizing it, maybe not as elaborately as Mayor Ellsworth was planning, but there'll be some acknowledgement. So those are happy hands.
Happy hands. Thank you. And Director Ellsworth, your hand's back up.
Thank you. And very briefly, also the Onisati people recognition there as well. So I think in terms of looking at the signage, we'll get to the right wording, et cetera, but it's appreciated that this is part of the consideration. So thank you.
Thank you. So with no other questions or comments from the board or the public, I'd entertain a motion. I think we already have a motion on all 4 items by Director Ellsworth. And then Director Doring, are you second?
Second.
Second by Director Doring. Laura, roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Hey, we can all applause. Excellent. Moving on to item 9.4, resolution number 22-10, and disposing of non-performing assets. Antonio Honorado, you're going to be presenting this. These are pages 214 to 219.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Alessio. My name is Antonio Honorado, and I am the Director of Finance here for NVTA. So for item 9.4, staff is asking the NVTA board to declare certain fixed assets as non-performing, and also to approve resolution 22-10, which is attachment number 1, authorizing the disposal of these fixed assets according to NVTA's policies, practices, and procedures asset management section. So on the second page of the memo, you will see that we are specifically recommending the disposal of bus 253, which, as you know, was involved in an accident about a year ago and was considered a total loss by the insurance. And we did have since replaced that bus with a new used vehicle, new bus. We are also recommending to dispose of buses 166, 167, and the on-field trolley bus number 403, since these assets are no longer in service and now has outlived their useful lives. We are also asking that the Avail CAD-AVL system, which has become obsolete and to be disposed of, and which is now replaced by a new cloud-based GMV Synchromatics CAD-AVL system. And lastly, we're asking for the disposal of the agency vehicle, since the car has outlived its useful life and is very costly to maintain, given that doesn't provide much benefit these days. Since some of these assets have not been fully depreciated, there is a fiscal impact. On an accounting basis, NVTA will basically need to write off $1,907,939 against the value of the fixed assets. However, the loss would be slightly offset by the insurance settlement for bus 253 in the amount of $175,094, which would mean the actual financial impact of this action is $1,732,845. So if approved, NVTA will dispose of the vehicles by sending it off all to auction, which means the agency may see a small check for the vehicles for the buses that are sold, but I don't see that totaling more than perhaps $10,000 at the most. Any incremental revenues we will receive from the auction will be for the purchase of a new vehicle or replacement equipment. For the buses that are set for disposal, the vehicles will be stripped down to the bare bones and equipment that can be used on other buses will be removed. And then placed in another vehicle at a future date. So just to recap, the request is to declare certain fixed assets in the resolution as non-performing and approve resolution 22-10 for disposing of those assets according to staff's recommendation. That concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Director Joseph, your hand was up first.
Yes, so I'm assuming the answer is not much, but the computer software, is there any resale? Because I'm assuming it's functional, just, not cloud-based, so it's not of this century, but is there any redeeming value there, or is that just going to be a complete loss?
It'll pretty much be a complete, we're going to have to write off the entire asset. Software we can't sell off, and the hardware is really, at this point, it's obsolete. I mean, any hardware you buy today is already obsolete. So we bought this hardware back in 2018, 2019. So there is absolutely zero value to try and sell off any hardware for the CADI AVL system.
I would just add that the software is proprietary.
Oh, okay, then it's the big thumb in all of this. Everything else is kind of easy. That one's the pill to swallow. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Joseph. Director Dunbar.
Yeah, question about, you mentioned bus 403, I think it was, the Yountville trolley. There was a backup trolley, and if I remember correctly, there was a third trolley way back when they were being tested or used in the city of Napa. Have those assets already been written off? Because we know they don't work anymore. So you just don't have them listed here. I was curious.
The first trolley that you mentioned, we gave, we stopped the downtown service in the city of Napa, and then that trolley became the town's trolley, right? That was retired, I believe, when I first got here, if I'm not mistaken, right, Tony? And then we replaced that and used the second trolley that we had for your backup when we acquired a new one. And the new one, I think, is now getting close to the end of its useful life. And so we're on our way to getting an electric vehicle in Yountville. So that's great news.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that all three had been taken off the books because they don't work anymore. And
There's still one. There's still one on the books. Yeah.
Barely. It barely works. And so it's on the way out. I get that. Thanks.
Yeah. And we did offer the trolley to the town of Yountville, but because of the cost and the constant breakdowns, the offer was refused. So
yeah, we know too much about it.
Thank you. No, thank you. Right. Director Garcia.
Yes, kind of related subject. Refresh my memory. We have explored leasing versus buying as a way of economically. I know some jurisdictions with their fleet equipment vehicles, their lease turns out to be a much better deal.
So almost exclusively all of our vehicles are acquired through grant funds that are not part of our operating dollars. So it really doesn't make sense to do that, although it is an eligible expense. But in terms of our automobile, I think the one that we've been driving is really, I don't know what year it is. It's very old.
Yeah.
And we are probably going to, when things reopen, lease a car. Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Director
Thank
Garcia.
you.
I don't see any other board hands up. So Laura, do we have any public comment on this item or written comment that has been submitted?
We do not.
Very good. Then I'd like to ask if someone would like to make a motion and a second on approving the staff recommendation.
Dunbar motion.
Just need a second.
Okay,
I'll
Dunbar made the
defer.
motion. Who made the second?
I think Mayor Garcia. did.
Garcia, yeah.
Okay, Garcia second. Laura, roll call, please.
All right, Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Excellent. Okay, we're almost there, folks. We're at 9.5 on the agenda. This is delegated authority changes to NVTA Policy Manual, Chapter 5, Contracting and Procurement Policy. Antonio is going to present this, and this is pages 220 through 321. Antonio.
Yes, so for this item, staff is asking the board to approve the executive director's delegated authority dollar amount increases to NVTA's Policy Manual, Chapter 5, which is the Contracting and Procurement Policies section. So the board last adopted an update to the contracting and procurements on July 15, 2020, but the focus was on incorporating revisions mandated by Caltrans Local Assistance Policy Manual. At the time, no other portions of the policy was revised, which brings us to the action today. The current delegated signature authority matrix was established in 2011 when the agency was focused on operations and administrative oversight on a few small projects, plans, and programs. Except for the multi-year TransEv contract, most projects were under $250,000 in total project costs. So at the time, the delegated authority was commensurate with the program costs and for the operations. Well, as you know, since then, NVTA has taken on several large-scale capital projects with several more in the pipeline. In fact, there is now over $210 million worth of projects in NVTA's portfolio of investments throughout the next few years, which includes, as you know, what we talked about just recently, the Vine Trail, of course, the maintenance facility, the new TransEv services contract, the Umola Park and Ride, Napa Forward, and the Marquee Saskell Junction project, which will break ground in the next few months. Having these many large projects warrants an increase in the executive director's delegated authority amounts for contracting purposes and to ensure projects are progressing efficiently and seamlessly. Staff is recommending the board approve new delegated authority levels, which reflect both current project oversight responsibilities and inflationary adjustments. So on page 2 of the memo, you'll see the proposed changes or what staff is recommending. Specifically, staff is recommending that the delegated authority for the executive director increase from a cap of $49,999, just $1 under $50,000, to $100,000. And anything over $100,000 will have to be approved by board action. And then for the change orders, provide a delegated authority allowance of up to $100,000 for non-construction phases in excess of the original award, and up to $250,000 for construction phases in excess of the original award. Of course, all delegated authority actions will be reported to the board on a quarterly basis through the financial update. Increasing the delegated financial authority will increase the responsiveness of the agency to contract with companies providing service quickly, especially on sensitive deadlines, sensitive matters where time is of the essence. Some of these projects have time-sensitive deadlines, and managing expenditures will be critical to achieving the objectives of the agency and ensuring projects stay on track. Of course, NVTA will collaborate with various stakeholders to ensure decisions are made thoughtfully. As I mentioned, page 2 of the memo presents the matrix of the proposed delegated authority modifications. Other than correcting some typographical errors in the policy, there are no other revisions requested at this time. Just to recap, the action before you is to approve the executive director's delegated signature authority dollar amount increase in the contracting and procurement policies. And with that being said, I can answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Antonio. And Director Joseph, your hand's up.
Yes, more in terms of helping me understand. So using the Vine Trail as an example, we approved a $618,000 contingency budget, and we're now authorizing the director to make change orders up to 100 grand or 250 grand, I guess. And so the contingency, the 618 is still kind of a cap on top of this discretion. So the director could make a $250,000 change order, but she couldn't do that 3 times because she'd blow the contingency budget, right?
So when you act to approve a contract, that is my authority to make any change, approve any change orders up to that amount, right? This, what Tony is talking about today is over that, over the amount that you have awarded. So that would, and then I would just remind everybody that every quarter you see a list of the things that I have approved. So currently I'm allowed to approve any change orders up to the amount that you've agreed to, and the not to exceed amount and the contingency.
Okay, so my misunderstanding then, because I was under the impression you have some discretion, but the contingency budget is still a constraint, that if you're approaching that, it would seem to me you'd come back to the board to say, okay, things are out of control. Otherwise, where does that money come up? I mean, where do we get the extra money that you have the authority to approve?
It's the project budget. We come to you, let's just say with a $10 million project budget, the contract is $8.5 million, and the balance is the contingency.
Right.
And then we do not, and that is what's you approve, that total. And then we do not come back to you unless we exceed the contingency. This would be above and beyond that. But obviously, I'm not going to award things without identifying new resources.
Right. Yeah, that's where I think we're just on the wrong, we're not synchronizing. It, you know, I don't have a problem with the additional delegation as long as we don't get past that contingency amount, because if we do, then it seems to be we need to have a discussion about where are we going to come up with the extra money.
Well, that's, I think, the language that we've added is in the past, my authority has included a cumulative total. But because our contracts now are millions and millions and millions of dollars, and I'm fine with, you know, I think it's great that you're questioning this. I'm fine with not making any changes, but the reality is if we don't, we are going to have more than one board meeting a month, and that is a challenge to schedule.
And all I'm saying is that day-to-day changes are fine. It's when, in the case of the Vine Trail, as you get closer to that $618,000 total, that's when I think you need to come back to the board to say, you know, we're running out of money, we need to identify something else or whatever. That's my point, is that the budgetary cap, the contingency budget, is essentially the real cap, and your discretion to spend within it, you know, as necessary is what we're delegating, if that makes sense.
Right, but that is already something I'm delegated.
Okay.
To spend within the award plus contingency. That is what we ask you to approve when we come to you with a contract.
Okay.
What I'm hearing, Kate, is that what you're asking is to go above what is delegated and is in the contingency with these new, this new measure, if you will.
That's correct.
Yeah, with this new amount.
That's correct.
In identifying the change orders, we would come back with an identified funding source. So we're not going to just go ahead and spend the money. We have to come back to the board and identify where the funding is going to come from to address that shortfall or that change order.
Thank you. Director Joseph, are you good with that, or do you have any more other follow-up questions?
Yeah, I think as it works through, I think it'll work itself out, because I don't think we're going to be hitting, $750,000 change orders right off the bat. So I think there'll be opportunities to manage before it goes crazy. So I'm okay.
Thank you. Director Canning.
Yes, Antonio, thanks for the report. Just as a frame of reference, the movement from the about $50,000 to $100,000 allowance, where is that consistent with other agencies and other executive directors in other agencies?
Yes, I did do a survey of similar agencies throughout the Bay Area. The CTAs, the countywide transportation authorities, as well as transit operators. So a range between 50 and 100,000 is reasonable. I chose the top of the range just because we're both a transit operator as well as a transportation planning agency delivering projects, and we're now facing contracts in the tens of millions of dollars. So it does warrant an increase of up to $100,000, which seems to be which was reasonable based on the survey methods.
Okay, and then you may know this, if not my colleagues and for the other cities would. Where does that fall relative to some of the other similar executive positions across the county, such as city managers, county CEO, et cetera? I'm just trying to get a frame of reference here.
I did not survey city managers or county CEOs. I just surveyed CTAs and transit operators in the Bay Area. That was my pool of
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Director Canning. Director Tagliabacci.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony, for your report today. It was great. I think I echo Director Joseph's sentiments. In my previous life as the Director of Public Works, we would have a similar vehicle to authorize up to the budget amount. And if anything exceeded that, then we would, as a director, I would have to go back and ask for an increase in the budget for the reasons that Director Joseph pointed out, which is where's the money coming from and what are the issues, and are we going to continue to see increases, or is this the only increase? So a lot more questions and answers with this. I can tell you in all the other agencies I worked at, it was a similar policy, which was allowed the town manager or city manager or CAO to spend up to the budgeted amount. And then if they exceeded that, including contingency, then they would come back to the governing body for approval. So I do have some questions on this, and they may have some different wrinkles with how Kate and her team and that organization run it, but definitely I share the concerns of Director Joseph.
I appreciate that, Director Tagliabacci. I mean, I think the challenge that we have is how frequently we meet. And so we would just have to call emergency. I mean, we're obviously not going to wait 4 to 5 weeks potentially in the middle of a capital project. And that is what we would do, So so far it hasn't been a problem on the projects that we're managing now, but it has been a problem in the past. And so we just wanted to do something to help us rectify it and not impose too much on board members' time, and recognizing that it's very difficult to schedule meetings with very busy people.
Kate, I was going to ask that question. How often do you think has this come up that you've had to go above budget in terms of your delegation?
Well, I have never done it. I wouldn't do it obviously within my authority, I do things, but, quarterly, we give you a report with our quarterly budgetary update that shows how I've used my delegated authority. And Tony would know probably more specifically, but I think it's only between, $100,000 to $200,000 a quarter. But it's on things that, are obviously essential to the agency, could be changes to contracts that you've approved that cumulatively did not equal $49,999, or for capital projects, $174,999. So yeah, it's not a whole lot. I would obviously use it with as much discretion as possible, which is typically what we've done now. And clearly I can't do it without having resources, but we only on rare occasions have we actually gone out and contracted new services. But in the instance, as an example, we had the opportunity, we had several issues come up on contracting. We found out that our current general counsel, that isn't her area of expertise. So we contracted with Dave Garrick and his team to help us with both the Vine Trail as well as the maintenance facility.
Thank you. And this is something that has not been reviewed or adjusted since 2011, as Antonio presented. Director Dunbar.
Yeah, I appreciate the sensitivity to sticking within budget parameters, but I think we're in a very different situation these days. And Chair Alessio, you just alluded to it. We have significant capital projects like we've never had in my 15 years on the board, and we need to recognize that there are going to be higher dollar amounts in play, and it's our job to make sure, one, we're budgeting correctly with contingencies, and if we do that right, then this is a moot point. And I think we do need to have the ability to be flexible so that we don't have delays, which are only going to add cost to any of these major capital projects. So I think I appreciate the sensitivity to not going over budget accidentally in a piecemeal way, but I think we have a new reality that we're looking at with costs and already material delays and just all the additional costs that are happening this year and going forward.
Thank you. And I see a thumbs up, which is nice to see. Thank you. Laura, do we have any, did I see Director Joseph? You have your hand up again.
No, I don't want to belabor the point. I think the concerns are out there, and I think going forward operationally, I think it'll work itself out. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Joseph. Laura, do we have any public comment either here with us or written?
We do not.
Very good. Do I hear a motion to approve recommended action by the staff?
Dunbar, so moved.
Thank you.
Second, Kraus.
And thank you, Dr. Kraus, for a second. Laura, roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
thank you. Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Scott Sedgley. Scott, are you on? Okay. Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
No.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the discussion. Okay, we're at 9.6, which is federal and state legislative update. Kate Miller, and these are pages 322 to 347.
Great. I will try to make this quick. I realize we're going over our normal time slot. The Congress passed a $1.5 trillion fiscal package that will fund the government until the end of the year, so September 30th, 2022. Included with the traditional spending package was $14 billion allocated for economic and humanitarian and military aid for Ukraine. The bill includes $81 billion for transportation, housing, and urban development that represents an 8% increase over 2021 levels. This includes a discretionary increase of $4 billion for HUD and $1.6 billion for the Department of Transportation. Prior to the congressional approval of the omnibus bill, the Federal Transit Administration has released fiscal year 2022 partial apportionments for FTA formula funds NVTA receives both FTA Section 5307 small urbanized area formula funds and FTA Section 5311 non-urbanized area formula funds. The apportionments reflect the bipartisan infrastructure law bump. The amount of revenues that NVTA will receive is expected to go up roughly 20% over prior years. On the state side, the Department of Finance's February revenue bulletin reported the first 7 months of fiscal year 2022 were about almost $16 billion above the governor's budget forecast. And about 6.2 billion of those revenues are from pass-through entity elective tax payments, which is a 2021 state tax change. This amount is expected to be offset by lowered personal income tax. Since under the law, every elective tax dollar received generates $1 of personal income tax credit. February 18th was the deadline to introduce new legislation. There are several bills of interest that NVTA would like you to act on today. I'm happy to go through each one and have you vote, or I can go through the entire group and you can ask questions. What is your preference, Vice Chair?
Just go through it, please.
Okay, great. AB 1638, Kylie would suspend the collection of fuel taxes for 6 months. This bill could have a profound effect on both local streets and road funds and state transit assistance. In addition, SB1 programs are also funded through gas tax. Staff is recommending that the board take an opposed position on this bill. AB 1778 would eliminate the ability to use state funds for personnel for widening projects. So personnel meaning the Department of Transportation. Staff is recommending that the board take a watch position on this bill. AB 1909 Friedman prohibits motorized bicycles on various types of bike pedestrian facilities unless adjacent to a roadway or unless specifically allowed by a jurisdiction. It further allows local jurisdictions to prohibit a class 3 bicycle, which is a battery assist of up to 28 miles per hour on certain facilities, and proposes various other changes, including requiring vehicles to change lanes when passing a bicyclist. Staff is recommending that the board take a watch position on this bill. AB 1944, Lee, would make permanent Brown Act changes to the Brown Act requirement that a board or committee member meeting in a non-public remote location would have to disclose the location. Staff is recommending that the board take a watch position on this bill. AB 1993, WICS, would require employees to verify each employee or independent contractor has been vaccinated against COVID-19 unless exempt because of religious or medical reasons. Staff is recommending that the board take a watch position on this bill. AB 2097, Friedman, would prohibit local government from imposing or enforcing a minimum parking requirement for all developments if the development is within half a mile walking distance to public transit. Under the transit definition, this could affect downtown Napa developments. Staff is recommending the board take a watch position on this bill. AB 2120, Ward, sponsored by the California State Association of Counties, would restore and apply a previous formula used for state and local bridge project funds to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act bridge funds. Staff is recommending that the board take a support position on this bill. AB 2449, Rubio, would authorize the use of teleconferencing without noticing the public, providing that a majority of the legislative body participates in person. Providing the video or phone options are provided for public participation. Staff is recommending that the board take a watch position on this bill. AB 2622, Mullen, would extend tax exemption on purchase of zero-emission transit vehicles. Staff is recommending the board take a support position on this bill. Senate Bill 852 Dodd would allow jurisdictions to create districts and authorize them to use tax increment financing as well as existing benefit assessment financing tools to mitigate climate change effects, including fire protection type services. Staff is recommending that the board take a support position on this bill. SB 878 Skinner, sponsored by California School Employees Association. The bill would direct schools that do not provide transportation services to work with parents, teachers, and transit operators and air districts to ensure all students have free transportation, get to school. Staff is recommending the board take a watch position on this bill. SB 917 Becker is similar to AB 629, which was introduced last year by Assemblymember Chu. It is sponsored by various transit advocacy organizations and would codify some of the changes outlined in the Blue Ribbon Task Force Transformation Action Plan. Staff met with Senate Transportation Committee staff and other small transit operators to voice concerns. There is general consensus that the bill is premature since many of the goals of the Transportation Action Plan have not been implemented. In addition, MTC just launched the Integrated Fare Pilot Program, and most of the region's transit systems have taken the position that the bill language should be consistent with the outcomes of the regional study, rather than try to shape fares at this point. For those reasons, staff is recommending that the board take a support if amended so that the fare elements are consistent with the region's Integrated Fare Pilot Program and other outcomes associated with the Transformation Action Plan. SB 922 Wiener repeals the sunset date on the CEQA exemption for active transportation plans and for restriping streets and highways, as well as signage, and extend the application of the exemption for projects to those submitted by January 1st, 2023. These projects would include bike ped, bus rapid transit, and EV charging. Staff is recommending that the board take a support position on this bill. SB 942 Newman would allow transit agencies to use their low carbon transit operations program, otherwise known as LC-TOP, for free or reduced transit passes without having to demonstrate greenhouse gas reduction. Staff is recommending that the board support this bill, take a support position on this bill. SB 1049 DOD establishes a transportation reliance program within Caltrans and would be funded from 15% of the available National Highway Performance Program funds that go to the state. The bill proposes to use the funds for climate mitigation and resilience projects. Staff is recommending the board take a support position on this bill. And SB 1050 DOD would allow tolling on State Route 37 administered by the Bay Area Infrastructure Finance Authority, or BAFA. Revenues from tolling will be used towards improvements on the corridor and to increase public transit and microtransit options. The bill factors in consideration for low-income users. Staff is recommending the board take a support position on this bill. Also, I just wanted to let you know that in your packet, there is already a staff support letter that was sent to the Senate Transportation Committee ahead of your action. I felt comfortable doing this because in our state legislative agenda for this year, you supported the advocating for tolling on State Route 37. Sending the letter in advance of the final board approval allowed us to meet the Senate Transportation's March 16th deadline. That was today. Let's see. SB 1100 would allow that's Cortese, would allow the removal of an individual who is willfully interrupting the meeting after a warning. Willfully interrupting is defined as intentional engaging in behavior during a meeting of legislative body that substantially impairs or renders infeasible the orderly construction of the meeting. Staff is recommending that the board take a watch position on this bill. And finally, SB 1157 Grover would permanently repeal the inflation adjustment of fuel taxes. This would reduce your local streets and road funds, transit funds, and have a negative effect on SB1 competitive programs. For that reason, staff is recommending the board oppose this bill. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Kate, real quick, on AB 907 in the written report, it says support, but then you said it's a watch. Is that AB 2097?
AB 2097.
Yeah, it shows support here, but you reported that you want to watch. Is that a change that was made since this was printed?
No, I'm my apology, my bad. It should have been a support.
Okay, so AB 2097 is a support. And then the other kind of difference I saw was SB 917. And there it shows a watch and you said support. Do you want us to, which is that?
No, that is definitely, it's a support if amended. Our issue, our challenge here is that we want to make sure that the bill is consistent with what the region is proposing to do. So we can make that change as well. I'm sorry, you know what, I probably didn't go through the final as much as I went through the draft with my legislative advocate. So my apologies.
No, there's a lot to go through, and you did make a mention about the, the amendment aspect of it. Are there any questions or comments by our board members? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, and Laura, do we have anybody in the public that is present that would like to make a comment or has submitted a written comment?
We do not.
Very good. Do we have a board member that would like to move the recommended action approving the receipt of this this report? And
so moved, Joseph.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, just making sure that it's with the change on 973 Becker.
Right, with that exception.
Thank you. So we have
Second, Garcia.
Very good. We have a motion by Joseph, a second by Garcia, and Laura, roll call, please.
Dan Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Joe Tagliabashi,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good. Okay, we're at future agenda items. Does any member have items they would like to add to a future meeting agenda? Not seeing any hands. Okay, that answers that. Thank you. And as we said, closed session has been postponed until our next meeting, which will be April 20th, as scheduled here. And so therefore, the meeting is adjourned at 3:29. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and letting me drive this ship here.
Well done.
Thank you. Have a good day. Take care, all.